My name's Amata, and in this Red Gaming Tech video I am here with a collection as we have some tech news and some general gaming news as well today. So what I have for you? Well, I have finally the end of that PlayStation 3 class action settlement that you might recall. We also have a release date for The Crew 2 as well as Yakuza Kiwami 2. In the tech world, however, we have some interesting stuff as ASRock are finally entering the GPU market. We have a new SSD coming to the market from ADATA, and the star of our show today is going to be the ASUS X470 motherboard, as the layouts and specs for these have been leaked, giving us some cool insights into the Ryzen 2000 series. But as I said, let's begin with the PlayStation 3. Now, I've got to admit, those are words I haven't said in a while, because obviously it's all been all about the PlayStation 4, and obviously the Xbox One and the PC as well. So you may recall, if you cast your mind back to the dawn of time, that class action settlement that was successful for people who owned the original fat PlayStation 3. Essentially, you might recall that a settlement was reached back in October of 2016, where basically the feature for the other OS on the PlayStation 3 was removed, which basically allowed people to partition their hard drive and also install Linux and a few other bits as well. But obviously Sony stripped it out, and this was done in the name of security at the time, but it pissed off a segment of the user base, and of course led to lawsuits, false advertising, allegations and all that sort of stuff. But while Sony have not admitted to any wrongdoing, they have done a settlement, which is not really big change for the end user, as it is up to $65, but considering the amount of people that they're probably paying out to, it's got to have added up to quite a large bill. But the long story short is, you now have 1 month left to collect up to $65, if at all. If you haven't actually gotten around to that, I'd imagine most people have. But obviously once that month is over, that's it, kaput, you had your chance, and we'll bring to an end probably one of the longest running legal sagas in gaming that's still going on, at least in the console space. So yeah, if you're owed that, you need to get your boogie on, mate. You're running out of time. So let's move swiftly on to our second gaming item, which is The Crew 2. Now, The Crew didn't do amazingly well, but obviously it's a niche product to begin with, so that's not really surprising. But The Crew 2 is looking improved on its predecessor, and we now have a release date for the game, as Ubisoft has said that it's going to be coming out on the PS4, Xbox One and PC on June the 29th, 2018, and it is going to have various enhancements for the PS4 Pro. So for those of you who are looking forward to this particular game, when it's a perfect game to while away this summer drought, as not many other games that are coming out during that time, but although I will say that it has been getting better over the last couple of years. But while we're talking about game release dates, let's move on to Yakuza. Now, of course, this has been out in Japan since December of 2017, so it's been quite the wait for Yakuza fans, but it's going to be coming out in both physical and digital form for the PlayStation 4 on August the 28th. It's going to cost a pretty penny of $49.99 in America and Europe. So basically it's coming out the end of August in the US and Europe, and it's going to cost you $50 or your regional equivalent. And for those of you who are kind of scratching your head going, another Yakuza game? Well, it's actually a Yakuza 2 remake, and as I said, it has been out in Japan since December of last year, but it is going to be making use of the same engine used in Yakuza 6, so it's going to look a lot better than its predecessor. So with all that said, let's move on to our tech segment, and our first item is going to be ASRock. So of course ASRock are going to be a name familiar to anyone who's been even slightly connected to PC gaming, even if you don't build your own rigs. But obviously this is going to be their first entry into the GPU market. Now, they have shown an official trailer for their gaming line, and the brand is going to be called Phantom. And they've also made use of words like unpredictable and mysterious. I don't know if I want an unpredictable GPU, to be honest. I'd rather it be solid, but you know, obviously this is just marketing speak. You know, they're not actually saying, yeah, it's so wild and wacky and unpredictable. Clearly, they're not meaning to take this literally. But while details are a little thin on the ground as to what they're actually going to be doing, the card that is teased is going to be using a Fairly standard dual axial fan design with 6mm heat pipes and a traditional aluminum fin stack. Now obviously, as the card shown in the trailer is a render, we can expect that the actual physical cards will look different. The other thing we do know, however, is that the cards will be using AMD Radeon GPUs, and at the moment at least there's no indication that they're going to be working with NVIDIA, but of course there's no need to kind of toss that in the bin entirely. They might do that in the future. Maybe they're just trying to get themselves on their feet, as obviously this is their first foray into the market. Maybe they're just thinking, hey, let's get the AMD side of things down, and then we can obviously maybe think about NVIDIA later, or they could just be sticking with AMD. It's tough to say. As I said, details are thin on the ground, but we're getting another competitor enter the GPU market, which is definitely going to be interesting. I look forward to seeing what they bring to the table. So our next topic is, of course, ADATA and SSDs. Now this one is a bit more of an FYI, especially for those of you who might be thinking of adding an SSD to your rig, if perhaps you're due for an upgrade, or you're entering the PC gaming world, or what have you. But ADATA, of course, are one of the leading brands within this area, and they have launched today a new SSD which makes use of 3D NAND flash memory. And this particular SSD is the ever so catchily named XPG SX950U, and it's of course 2.5-inch SATA 6GB a second gaming SSD. Now they generally use Micron over ADATA, but it doesn't specify, so they might make use of Toshiba in other ones. It might be a mix of both, or they just haven't bothered to say. It does have a Silicon Motion SM2258 controller, and it can reach large capacities of up to 960GB with some of the highest read-write speeds possible on SATA 3, with up to 560 read and 520 megabytes a second write speed. And I know some of you are going, yeah, that's all great, but what about the price? Well, it's actually not too bad. It's $69.99 for 120GB, $99.99 for 240, $169.99 for 480, and $319.99 for 960. So this is actually down significantly from the previous one that they put out, and to be honest, $70 for 120 gigabytes, SSD is not terrible. $100 for obviously 240 is pretty damn decent. I've actually had my eye on an SSD for my rig for quite some time, and this is definitely going to be going into my maybe pile. Anyway, let's move on to what I know you're all interested in, really, the ASUS X470. So of course there's been much ado about the Ryzen 2000 series, and now we have a leak thanks to a member of the Hardware Lux forums on the ASUS X470, which gives us some details about the Ryzen 2000. So we have at least 6 X470 motherboards coming from ASUS, and they're going to be the Prime X470 Pro, TUF X470 Plus Gaming, ROG Strix 470F Gaming, the ROG Strix X470i Gaming, and the ROG Crosshair 7 Hero. So, the user, which is a fellow or lady by the name of Emissary42 from the Hardware Lux forums, discovered manuals for the Prime, TUF and Strix motherboards, and as you might expect, they contain the layout and specs. There isn't too much of a difference between the X470 Pro and the Strix X470, apart from a few debug LEDs. The real difference comes into play with the X470 TUF Plus. So that's going to be a cheaper alternative, as it has fewer connectors, which is usually the caveat with the cheaper end of things. But the more interesting stuff is actually the spec sheet, as the spec sheets confirm something that we already suspected for the second gen of Ryzen, and confirms that the main difference is between the first gen and the second gen is one aspect, and that is its improved memory support. Now of course we have already seen this in a leaked SysSoftware review, but this is pretty much confirming that Zen Plus will support faster memory, which of course gives it better compatibility for faster memory kits. So the documents do show that Ryzen 2000 Pinnacle Ridge processors are going to support up to 3466 MHz, whereas Ryzen 1000 and of course the 2000 Vega APUs can only support up to 3200. So for those of you who like to crank up the speed on your memory, this is definitely going to be good news. Now of course the spec sheets also detail, especially on the X470 Pro first page, the expansion slots that you can have for each generation. And obviously most of the details are to do with motherboard specific stuff, like, you know, how many HDMIs there are, how many USBs there are, that sort of thing. But it does give us a few details further about the second gen Ryzen, and of course, as I said, confirms the fact that the second gen will have a better memory support. And obviously this has been a little bit of a sore topic for those of you who did pick up Ryzen. Of course, there was memory compatibility issues, excuse me, and obviously AMD were pretty good with sorting that out, but it's just nice to see that the second gen will improve further upon that work they've already laid with the first generation. So, there you have it. That is me done for this video. Thank you very much for watching. As always, your support is very much appreciated. So, really, thank you again for watching. I'll see you next time.